It is September 9 AD, the Teutoburg forest, Germania. You have been marching for 6 days, and the world has been getting smaller with every one of them. Not in the way distance makes a world small. Not the shrinking of Hispania behind you as the years of service accumulated. Not the way Rome itself becomes an abstraction when you have been long enough in the provinces. Smaller in the immediate physical sense. The road narrowing to a track, the track to a suggestion. The sky above you reduced to a thin gray strip between canopies so dense they have forgotten what open ground looks like. The trees in Germania are not like the trees in Hispania. They do not stand apart from one another, individual and considered. They press together like a crowd that has decided not to move, and they have been pressing in on both sides of the column since the second day, and they show no sign of stopping. You are in the Legio 17, and you are not a Roman citizen. Your name is Marcus Aemilius Rufus, 23 years old, from Caesar Augusta in the province of Hispania Tarraconensis, what the locals call Zaragoza, a city on the Ebro that smells of olive oil and river mud, and the particular dust of a place that has been inhabited so long, it has stopped noticing itself. Your father is a merchant, a good one, patient, precise, with the kind of mind that sees the shape of a transaction before either party has spoken. He wanted better for his sons than ledgers and mule carts. Better, in the vocabulary of the Roman world, means one thing: citizenship. You are not a citizen. Your father is not a citizen. 3 generations of your family have lived under Roman rule, paid Roman taxes, observed Roman law, spoken Latin in the marketplace as naturally as breathing, and remained, in the eyes of the state, peregrini. Free men, but not Roman men. The distinction is not abstract. It determines what courts you can access, what property you can own in your own name, what your children can inherit, how far they can go. It is the difference between living inside the empire and living alongside it, and the distance between those two positions, measured in daily life, is considerable. The Legion changes this. 25 years of service, 25 years of carrying the eagle through whatever corner of the world requires it, and at the end, a diploma, a bronze tablet, 2 words engraved in metal that your father has never been able to say about himself. Civis Romanus, Roman citizen. You have served 8 years, 17 to go. The men around you have their own versions of the same story, worn smooth by retelling into something that no longer needs to be said aloud. Titus, full name Titus Labienus Secundus, from Narbo in southern Gaul, built like a mule and approximately as stubborn, joined because his father's land was failing and the province offered nothing. He has a wife back in Narbo named Flavia, who sends him dried figs in small clay pots that arrive months after they were sent, and he eats them with the specific reverence of a man performing a ritual. He is the best soldier you have ever served beside. He is also, when the mood takes him, a chronic pessimist, the kind who is right just often enough that you cannot dismiss him. Barca, Hanno Barca, from the province of Africa, dark-skinned and economical in his movements, has a habit of humming while he works, a tune from home whose words he says he no longer remembers. It is a quiet sound, almost below hearing, and then you have come to understand over 8 years that it functions as a kind of instrument. When Barca is humming, the situation is manageable. When he stops, pay attention. These are your people. 80 men, or what remains of 80 men after 8 years of service. You know them by their breathing in the dark, by the specific rhythm of how they move under load, by which ones pray before an engagement, and which ones drink, and which ones go very quiet in the way that looks identical to courage and to fear, and that you have learned over time not to try to distinguish. 3 nights ago in camp, with the tree line 20 paces from the palisade and the forest making its sounds in the dark, Titus sat at the fire and said, "He's leading us somewhere." You said, "Varus trusts him." Titus said, "Varus has dined with him." That's not the same thing. Arminius, a Germanic chieftain who spent his childhood as a Roman hostage, who was educated in Rome, commissioned as an auxiliary officer, granted citizenship, and then went home. A man who knows the Legion from the inside. its formations, its responses, its habits of march. He has spent years building something in this forest, and the intelligence reports he brought to Publius Quinctilius Varus, reports describing a local uprising that conveniently required redirecting 3 legions deep into the trees, were precise, credible, and entirely his own invention. Barca looked at the tree line that night for a long moment. Then he said, without drama, "Every trap needs bait. We're the bait." Nobody answered him. The fire crackled. The forest made its sounds. You watched the trees, and the trees, as they always do, gave nothing back. The rain started before dawn. In Hispania, rain arrives with intention and leaves the same way. Here it is a condition, a permanent state of the air that exists somewhere between mist and downpour and makes no distinction between your cloak and your skin. The ground beneath you stopped being ground in any reliable sense 2 days ago. What you are walking on is a negotiation between mud and root systems, and the roots are winning. The column has compressed. This is the thing the training ground cannot teach you. How terrain dismantles a formation without a single enemy present. 15,000 men who move with precision on open ground become, on a track through dense forest with a ridge on one side and a marsh on the other, something unrecognizable. Stretched thin, blind beyond 20 paces, unable to deploy, unable to respond. The centuries separated from each other by the simple geography of a path too narrow for the army trying to use it. You can see the men directly around you. The rest of the Legio 17th is somewhere in the trees, connected to you only by sound. Your centurion, Gaius Petronius Macro, is walking the line. 20 years of service. A face that has stopped registering weather as a variable worth acknowledging. A scar from jaw to collarbone earned in Pannonia that he has never once explained, and that no one has ever directly asked about because some questions answer themselves. He moves along the column with the focused, unhurried attention of a man who is counting things. Men, positions, angles, the specific quality of the ground, and his expression is doing the thing it does when he is paying very close attention and does not want you to know it. You have served under Macro for 4 years. You know his expressions the way you know weather. You notice things. 8 years in the Legion trains this into you below the level of conscious thought. A constant low-level audit of the environment, filing details before you have decided whether they matter. The ridge to your right, rising through dense trees to a crest you cannot see. The marsh to your left, which rules out any lateral movement in that direction entirely. The way the track bends ahead, curving toward the base of the ridge in a way that will compress the column further still. And then the other thing. The thing you have been almost noticing for several minutes before you fully notice it. The way you almost notice a sound stopping before you register that the sound has stopped. The birds have gone quiet. The forest has been full of birdsong since you entered it. A dense, layered constant beneath everything else, so present and so unvarying that you absorbed it into the background the way you absorb the sound of your own footsteps. It has been there every hour of every day for 6 days. It is not there now. The silence where the birds were is a specific and particular silence, not the absence of noise. The column provides plenty of that. The absence of something that was alive and is no longer present, and the question of where it went and why. You look at the ridge. You look at Macro. Macro has stopped walking. He is standing very still at the edge of the track, looking up at the slope with an expression that has moved past the careful neutral he maintains on the march and into something you have only seen on his face twice before. In Pannonia, in the moments before engagements that did not go as planned. You open your mouth. The ridge opens first. It starts with a sound you cannot identify. A single sound from somewhere on the ridge above you that is not wind and not animal and not anything the forest has produced in 6 days of marching. A sound that moves through you as a signal before it has become a thought. You look up. You see a ridge full of men. They were not there. You looked at that ridge an hour ago and the hour before that, and every hour of every day since the trees closed in, and they were not there. And now they are there. Hundreds of them, visible for just a fraction of a second between the tree line and the volley. The shapes of them dark against the gray sky. And then the javelins are already in the air, and the fraction of a second is gone, and the world comes apart all at once. Not with the clean, dramatic violence of an open engagement. Not the clash of two lines meeting on flat ground that the Legion's training anticipates and its doctrine answers. This is different. This is noise from every direction simultaneously, javelins falling at angles your shield was never designed to address. The man in front of you taking one through the shoulder and going down without a sound you can hear. The man behind you colliding with your back because the column is still moving and the column does not yet know it needs to stop. Macro's voice cuts through everything.
Form up! Shields up!
On me! And here is what you understand in the next 60 seconds, in the way you understand things in combat, not as thought but as the body's rapid, brutal education in what is and is not possible. The testudo cannot form. The trees will not allow it. The roots, the slope, the press of panicking men from other centuries who have also been hit and are also trying to respond. All of it prevents the geometry the formation requires. And without the formation, the Legion is not the Legion. It is men. Individual men in a forest, being attacked from ground they cannot see by an enemy that will not stand still long enough to be engaged. This is what Arminius built. Not only an ambush, a situation, a set of conditions in which everything Rome does well becomes impossible, and everything Rome cannot do becomes the only option available. Varus knows this. Somewhere ahead in the column, he is already trying to push toward open ground, already sending orders forward and back through a column too compressed and too broken to execute them, already understanding that the only way out of this forest is through it, and that Arminius's warriors are attacking in waves for precisely this reason, to slow the movement, to keep the column in the trees, to prevent the one thing that might save what remains of 3 legions. The forest is the weapon, everything else is detail. Barca arrives beside you. He was 4 men ahead in the column. Now he is here, without announcement, without explanation. Simply present in the way Barca is present in emergencies, as though he has already calculated where he needs to be and arrived there before the calculation finished. His shield is up. There is blood on his forearm that he has not mentioned and that you will not ask about. Titus locks his shield against yours from the left. He says nothing. You say nothing. You hold. The first hours are loud in a way that reorganizes what the word loud means. Not just the volume, the layering of it, the way sound comes from multiple directions simultaneously so that your ears cannot locate threat by direction, cannot tell you which part of the tree line to watch, cannot give you the information you need in the format you need it. The Germanic warriors attack from the ridge, withdraw before the sentry can respond, appear from the trees to the left, withdraw again. They do not stand and fight. They have no reason to stand and fight. The forest is theirs. The column is not going anywhere. Macro keeps the sentry moving, forward when a gap opens, defensive when it closes, never static for long enough to become a fixed target. He does not explain his decisions. He does not need to. You have served under him for 4 years, and you trust the decisions the way you trust the ground under your feet, which today is more than the ground deserves. By midday, you understand that this is not a battle. A battle has a shape, a beginning, a line, an engagement that moves toward resolution. What is happening in the Teutoburg forest has no shape. It is a forest swallowing an army one piece at a time, methodically without urgency, because the forest is patient and the army cannot leave, and those two facts together make everything else inevitable. You understand this. Understanding it does not help you survive it, but you understand it. Barca takes a wound on the second day. A spear from the tree line during a gap in the fighting. It catches him across the ribs, not deep enough to drop him immediately, but deep enough to change the way he breathes, which changes everything. Titus binds it without being asked, fast and tight, the way soldiers bind wounds in the field, not gently. not with the care of a physician, but with the specific violence of someone who understands that pressure is the only thing that matters right now, and everything else is secondary. Barca says nothing during the binding. Afterward, he picks up his shield. He does not pick up his pilum, and you pick it up for him and carry both without comment, because commenting would require acknowledging what the wound means, and neither of you are doing that yet. Now the humming has stopped. The second night you do not sleep. Nobody sleeps. The sentry holds a depression at the base of the ridge, a position Macro identified as marginally less indefensible than the alternatives, which is the best that the available geography offers. The rain continues. The cold arrives with the darkness, the specific cold of a northern forest in September that does not announce itself dramatically, but simply begins, quietly and persistently, removing things. You sit with your back against a tree, and Titus on one side and Barca on the other, and you talk the way soldiers talk in the dark when there is nothing else available, not about the situation, not about tomorrow, but about the things that exist outside the situation, the things that remain real at a distance. Titus talks about Flavia. He does this sometimes, not with sentiment, not performing grief for an audience, but with the specific precision of a man assembling someone from details, because assembling her is a way of keeping her present at 3,000 miles. Her laugh, he says, starts before anything is funny and ends after everyone else has stopped. She burns bread, never the same way twice, as though failure has a range worth exploring. Barca says, mine burns everything the same way, as if consistency is the achievement. Titus says, you have a woman. Barca says, in Carthage, Sophoniba. She would find this forest very funny. Titus says, this is not funny. Barca says, no, but she would find it funny anyway. You think about Caesar Augusta, about your father's warehouse by the Ebro, the smell of olive oil and sawdust and river in the mornings, about the diploma, the bronze tablet, the 2 words, the thing that was supposed to make these 25 years mean something legible and permanent. You think about whether you will live to hold it. You think about whether, if you do not, the 8 years already spent will have been worth the 17 you never got to serve. You decide not to finish that thought. You watch the tree line. The tree line watches back. By the 3rd day, the sentry is not 80 men. You stopped counting somewhere in the 2nd day, when the number became the kind of information that was too clear and too small and too final to be useful. Macro knows. You can see that he knows by the quality of his silence, which has changed, less the focused quiet of a man managing a situation, and more the quiet of a man who has finished calculating and is now simply doing the next thing and the thing after that, because the next thing is all that remains. The column is trying to move. Somewhere ahead, a decision has been made, not to hold, not to fortify, but to push through toward open ground, toward the Rhine, toward the world beyond these trees where Roman formations mean something and the shapes of things still make sense. The buccina sounds, the fragments of what was once 3 legions respond to it with the exhausted instinct of men who have been following signals for so long, the response is below thought. You move. You see Varus once from a distance through the rain and the trees. Mounted, briefly, uncertainly mounted. His horse as exhausted as everything else around it. You are not close enough to see his face clearly. You are close enough to see the way he sits, the set of his shoulders, the particular stillness of a man who has stopped making decisions because the situation has moved beyond the reach of his decisions. It is not the posture of a Roman commander managing a military crisis. It is the posture of a man who understands, with complete and devastating clarity, what he has done. You look away. Macro is calling the sentry. You fall in. The end comes the way ends come, before you see it, from a direction you were not watching, at a moment when your attention was on something else entirely. A volley from both sides simultaneously, the ridge and a slope to the left that the column has been moving alongside without knowing it was occupied. The last coherence of the march breaks apart in the way it has been breaking for 3 days, only faster, only more completely. Macro goes down. You see it happen, and you file it in the place where you have been filing things. Not grief yet, the compression of grief, the thing that will become grief if you survive long enough for the compression to release. Titus is to your left, still standing, reduced by 3 days of this to the simplest possible version of himself, the version that is only the next second and the one after. Barca is on the ground. You do not know when. You are not watching. He is on the ground 3 feet from you, and he is not moving, and his shield is at a wrong angle, and the humming has been gone since the wound on the 2nd day, and the place where you have been compressing things becomes suddenly completely full, and something spills that you cannot afford to spill. Not here, not while the tree line is still moving, not while there is still a next second to survive. You put your hand on his chest. You feel nothing. You stand. Titus is looking at you with the face of a man who has done the same calculation and arrived at the same answer, and is waiting to see what you decide to do with it. You say, "Move." He moves. You do not decide to escape. There is no moment of tactical clarity, no decision assembled in a calm and functioning mind. What happens is older and simpler than tactics. The line breaks, the men around you scatter into the trees, and your body, the body that has been a soldier for 8 years and has learned below the level of thought the difference between situations that can be survived and situations that cannot, moves into the trees, away from the track, away from the sounds, into the forest that has been killing you for 3 days and is now the only cover you have. Titus is with you. You know this without looking, by his breathing, by the rhythm of his movement through the undergrowth behind you, by the specific sound of Titus moving fast through difficult ground. You do not call to him. You do not look back. You move. The forest closes around you and becomes, for the first time, something other than a trap. You navigate by slope, downhill when you can, because downhill leads to water, and water leads to rivers, and the Rhine is west, and west is the only word you have left that means anything at all. The sounds of pursuit rise behind you. You move faster. The sounds rise again, closer, and then, gradually, over a distance you cannot measure. They do not rise further. They recede. They become part of the forest's ambient noise, indistinguishable from it. And then the forest's noise is only the forest's noise. You slow, you stop. It is dark by the time you find a place to rest. The exposed root system of a fallen tree. A space beneath it just large enough for 2 men to sit with their backs against the wood and their eyes on the trees ahead. You have no fire. You have no food. You have your armor and your sword, and 1 fewer man than you started the day with, and the forest pressing in on all sides with the patient, enormous indifference of something that has been here long before Rome and intends to remain long after. Titus sits beside you. For a long time, neither of you speaks. The rain has eased to something barely worth calling rain, a mist that settles on everything without drama, thorough and cold. In the canopy above you, very faintly, something moves. An animal, far enough away to be an animal. After a while, Titus says 1 word. Barca. You say, "I know." Nothing else. You close your eyes. The forest makes its sounds. Rain in the high canopy, the slow creak of wood that has been growing for a century, something rustling briefly in the undergrowth to the north and then going still. The sounds of a place that has finished its business and returned to itself. The sounds of something ancient and enormous that does not know what Rome is and would not adjust itself if it did. You breathe. You open your eyes. You stand. Titus stands. Whether the forest releases you, whether the 2 figures moving west through the trees at first light reach the Rhine, or find something else waiting in the dark between here and there, this the forest does not say. It has taken what it has taken. It keeps its own account of what remains. You move west. The trees close behind you. You were there. The Battle of the Teutoburg forest took place over 3 days in September of 9th AD. 3 Roman legions, the 17th, the 18th, and 19th, along with auxiliary units and camp followers, were ambushed and destroyed by a coalition of Germanic tribes led by Arminius of the Cherusci. Between 15,000 and 20,000 Romans died. The legion's numbers were never reused. In the entire history of Rome, this is almost without precedent. Numbers retired from the order of battle, as if the legions themselves were being mourned. Arminius was a Roman-trained auxiliary officer and a citizen of the empire he destroyed. He knew Roman formations, Roman responses, Roman habits of march. He designed the ambush around their weaknesses and executed it over 3 days with a patience and precision that Roman military doctrine had no answer for. Publius Quinctilius Varus died on the battlefield. He fell on his own sword. His head was sent to Rome, sent by Arminius, as a declaration about what had happened and who had made it happen. The Emperor Augustus was devastated. He let his beard grow. He stopped cutting his hair. He walked the corridors of his palace at night and cried out into the dark, Quintili var, legiones rede, Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions. He never got them back. Rome launched punitive campaigns into Germania in the years that followed. Germanicus crossed the Rhine and found the battlefield, found the bones, found the eagle standards still in Germanic hands. But Rome never again attempted to permanently occupy the territory east of the Rhine. The river became the border. It remained the border for centuries. The battle did not merely stop a military campaign. It drew a line across Europe that shaped the languages, the cultures, the legal traditions, and ultimately, the nations that followed. The world where Latin became French and Spanish and Italian ends, roughly, at the place where 3 legions entered a forest and did not come out. Arminius was assassinated years later by members of his own tribe who feared his growing power. He was 37 years old. He had never been defeated in battle by Rome. Rome remembered him. It had no choice. History is full of moments like this. If this one moved you, subscribe so you don't miss the next one. A thumbs up helps more than you might think. And leave a comment. Tell us which moment in history you'd like to step into next, or simply that you were here. Every voice matters. This is You Are There. We'll see you in history.